You know, training is such a complicated subject from time to time, and you wonder, where do trainers get their vision to put training together, and how do they think one thing's relevant and one's not? Well, that's coming right up.
This particular statement originally, that the first time I ever ran across a version of this was Arie de Geus, who was one of the Royal Shell executives, and he was retired. And I got really deep into research on technician training and shop performance and the relationship and the ROI. And what happened is that we learned so much. In 6 years we were studying performance of a shop all the way up to the end of the 6 years of the actual studies. And we found a lot. In fact, the iCar booth down there I led that study for them. And you go down there, you'll see a lot where they'll say it improves 14%, cycle times. That's where those come from. But what we found was in the studies, we would say, okay, so you are a steel structural technician. Here's what we know that by the industry you need to know, and we assessed what you knew and what you didn't, and we filled those gaps. And we did that across the board in the shop, and we watched the performance of the shop. But what we found was there were shops that would come into these studies who were just great performers. And then there was those groups that were really low performers, and then there's, the bulk were average. And I even told my team, I said, I don't even know how we can help these shops, they're so good, right? And I was looking at these shops that were really the lowest performers, like, boy, they got a lot of potential, right? What we found was the shops that were the best performers gained the most and sustained it. The average gained a lot and sustained some of it. The lowest gained the least and sustained none of it. And so it was like, wait a minute, same square footage, similar equipment, same number of employees are really close to this shop. And we began to try to unlock what was the secret sauce, right? And that was culture. And so we identified 8 different things, and it applies to whether it's mechanical service or collision, small businesses. There were 8 things that we identified that were all of the highest performing, had at least 6 of them. And the 2 main ones were an expectation to learn. So if you worked in that business, whether you were the owner or you swept the floor, there was this expectation to learn. When they sent technicians to class, they set the preference that, look, when you go there, we're investing in you, we expect you to learn, bring it back and share it, right? So there was this whole culture that these other shops on the other time would apologize. I got to send you this class because, we're in a DRP and we need, the insurance company's requiring or whatever. Well, those guys, I'm convinced they learned something, but they were in a culture they could never admit they were learning, because if they did, then it was like in that culture, it's admitting I didn't know something that I should know. So there was this kind of cover-up that suppressed that business. And of course, turnover is high. You bring in a piece of equipment, this shop up here, those guys would tear it apart, learn it, teach each other what they learned to get the most out of whatever it was. This shop down here, 2 people would learn when they brought it in new, and the distributor brought it in and trained them on it. Within a year, those 2 guys aren't there. Nobody knows how to use the equipment properly, right? So those cultures, there's this big gap in the cultures. And so I was really blessed. There was a lot of articles and interviews in the collision industry about it. And I was asked to go to the International Body Shop Industry Symposium in Barcelona and speak on it. And it was just a real interest across the globe about this, these things that we found. And so now I come to AMI, and one of the things that we did find is that the office people, the administrative people, were often overlooked when it comes to education and training. And there was this common thing that was always said, and that is, well, we typically don't train our office because they don't stay long. Well, they didn't stay long because they would see training being done by everybody around them. The business was investing in everybody but them. So that kind of set that up, right? Yeah. So when I had an opportunity and was asked to take this organization over, I was like, I got to do this. This is my chance, right? One of the things that this was an experience that I had. I grew up in the collision industry. I had this experience that was so extraordinary. It was a kind of blindsided me, when we found this. And And now that I'm at AMI, I have a whole segment of the mechanical service repair, and I'm relatively unknown, so I haven't had the opportunity to speak on this stuff, you know, and it matters. It really matters. To me, the more people that can hear what I experienced, the better. Because there's a whole segment in this story about recruiting that we accidentally stumbled across. That has to do with learning culture. So once you establish a learning culture, or you're trying to, for example, if the first thing you put in the help wanted ad is the expectation to learn and share, you get a totally different individual that shows up and responds to that help wanted ad.
That's a good point.
It really does. Yeah. You know, because especially if you're trying to build a learning culture, you need people who are interested in learning.
Yeah.
And I tend to be a little almost shy to talk and use the term training, because training doesn't really highlight what's really matters. In our studies, training was just an event people went to, right? If they didn't learn anything, nothing happened. What makes things happen in a positive way is when people learn, and that's really important.
Right, and I find out that follow-up makes training work.
You bet.
All right.
You bet it does.
See, I know something about it too.